Hi, I'm Mariana DeCarli and welcome to my channel. If you're here, you're probably interested in writing, books, AuthorTube, and you might very well be an author yourself who's interested in following a little bit of my journey. I've started this series to be able to share with you what it's like to really kickstart your journey into literary fiction. I am an author who has a catalog of nonfiction works, and I have always worked in that nonfiction space. I've worked with coffee table books, content that is sold across different platforms. I've worked with co-editing, academic proceedings, and things of the sort. So I come from that space. And I have also more recently been involved with quite a bit of anthological work related to Native American cultures in my, well, Native Brazilian cultures, but yes, Native South American cultures. And so it's really interesting because I've decided to take ideas that I had spinning in the background and transform them into a literary fiction book for the very first time. So I set out on this journey to be able to share this information with other people who are on a similar path. And with that in mind, this video is really focused on how we go from an idea to a plot. And this is, of course, in the context of a fiction book. So here we go. For me, this has been a journey. I've always known that I wanted to one day write a literary fiction book, and I've always had this dream of putting something together, but it was really difficult for me to pin down the general ideas that I had and transform them into something that I could actually have people read and explain into a story, because I had a collection of separate characters that were not existing in the same universe. So what I started doing was, first of all, big tip is when you're starting off on your journey, it is amp up your reading. And that goes for genres outside of what you're planning to write. And even if you don't even have a genre yet, I would say amping up my reading and actually picking up a plethora of different books around that time really helped me to be able to get some more clarity of plotting and what that looks like. So I think that that's really important. Second thing that was really important that I did around the same time was to sit down and have a visual explanation of what the book is going to look like. So these are the main characters that I already had in my mind in terms of an idea, what kind of people they were going to be. And so I started really early in that journey of like trying to plot these different characters and ideas that did not connect yet, and then draw out big points that I wanted to include in my story. So I have a general idea of what I wanted to do. I didn't have a theme yet, but the theme came as I plotted those down on paper. So I really did that exercise of like, these are separate stories about different people. These are separate stories that don't happen in the same universe, but now I need a running thread that's gonna take them through from point A to point B. And in that process, I'm also gonna figure out my theme. I already knew that in terms of what I wanted to do genre-wise. As I picked up my reading more, I wasn't as interested, for example, in YA. I wasn't as interested in fantasy. I wasn't as interested in sci-fi. I really was looking at contemporary, and that was always the case. And so for me, setting out with that idea of like, this is going to be a contemporary novel. This is going to be a contemporary novel that's going to include a collection of different characters that I have throughout the years been thinking of, but now I need to really put them down and have this cohesive thread that's going to take them through. And this was a really challenging process. For me, as someone who is an observationalist, it was really challenging to be able to start off at a point where I had an idea based on kind of real world events, and then depart that into the fiction realm where I start creating aspects of those characters and of this plot that don't relate to real life. But for me, the biggest thing was to really visualize it on paper and to have that kind of a timeline as you would if you're, for example, studying history, of point A to point B, of where your story is going to go, and then start inserting, via some sort of diagram that works for you, those turning points in the plot. So in the last video, I also said that I looked into some resources when I started off this fiction journey. And one of the things that I looked into was Save the Cat Writes a Novel, which is a book that has been recommended by tremendous amount of people, and that works off of the system of beats, that each story has a separation of beats that need to happen, and these are key points in a story to be able to bring cohesion to what you're trying to produce. Now, that doesn't have to be something you follow 100%. And I have spoken to seasoned authors who have never read that book and do not follow that methodology, but it is a methodology that can help you. I had a look at it and it helped me to think in those terms of when I'm going to visualize my timeline of the story I'm trying to build. It is interesting to make sure that the momentum of where things that you want to happen are clear to you. And I think that that was one of the key points of transforming the initial idea, which for my novel, which is called The Knightsbridge Crowd, and it's coming out later this year. This novel started off with, there's a neighborhood I used to live in. There's loads of people who live there, and I used to be someone who used to sit and people watch and have a look and overhear stories and just, participate, but also be an observer in that story. And I used to really think, wow, these are all great occurrences that would, I could really develop and be creative about and think of how I could expand this into an actual novel. But for me to be able to do this, I need something to happen. That's where the beat system and where this kind of timeline really helps, because I need things to happen. I need a story that's going to not just be me jotting down how I'm overhearing a fascinating conversation between two strangers. It has to have these moments where there is a challenge. The characters are going to set out to fix this challenge, and then they're going to have a motivation. They're going to be put in a situation where they're going to overcome this challenge. And in the meantime, of course, there will be smaller challenges. They're going to set their course either off track, or it's going to mask what their real intentions are. And then there will be a resolution at the end. The book I am writing is part of a series that I am intending to put out. So there will be a resolution that will come as a result of the story, but then there will be questions that will be left unanswered for subsequent series editions. So this is something that I'm currently working on in terms of how the story will follow into the other parts of the series. But it is very important that there is a resolution to the main issue of this novel. So by the end of this transforming an idea into a plot, you should be able to, via this kind of visualization, actually understand what is your main theme. What are you trying to tell the reader? What is the message to that reader? What is the kind of underlying story that is going to be a part of every character's lives in one way or another? And that is really a big question that should be more clear as you set out on the writing journey. So for me, in summary, all of this goes back to putting your idea on paper in a way that you can have a timeline of what's going to happen in your book, and filling that in. Of course, this process is not a single day process. This is really early in your planning, but having that ability to then take that and explain it to your person that you're confiding in, or your critique partner, or your editor, or someone who's supervising your work. If you can take them from that point A to point B, not that you have the conclusion yet, you don't have to have the finale of your book, but you have the journey that you're going on in this book. That's when your idea really materializes from just an idea to a plot. And I think that in that process, there are questions that can help you and guide you throughout this, so that you can arrive at that final destination. Some of them I've already mentioned. They include things like, what are you trying to say? What are your characters trying to achieve? What are your characters trying to do? What are the problems they are kind of facing and living with? What are the hurdles they're going to have to overcome, and why are they motivated to do that? So when you think about this, when you're having this idea and you're starting to really think about what you're trying to do in your fictional novel, it is really important to just ask yourself these questions. And you can ask those questions throughout your writing process, and you should ask them throughout your writing process, because one thing I have found is no matter how much I plan, and I'm halfway between a planner and a pantser, I'm someone who I will still go back to the character and ask those questions, because I need to make sure that they're consistent, that I haven't, between one writing session and the other, because of course it takes months to conclude this novel, I haven't changed their motivation completely or their personality, and now I have something completely different. So it is important to keep asking yourself a lot of this, and to keep checking that it's still there and referring back to those notes. So in the cover video, you would have seen a notebook. It's very important to have one. It's very important to take your annotations and to really develop a system where you can go back to your timeline and double check that that still makes sense. But, you know, that process from going from your idea to your plot, it really is about sitting down with yourself with a blank canvas, with a blank piece of paper, and understanding why this idea would matter to someone who's reading. Why does this idea translate into something that someone is willing to pay for and to read and to stay motivated and to participate in? So that big why, which is your theme, that big how, which is your story, that big when, which is obviously your timeline, that big who are your characters, all of these questions, these are things that are going to help you land that idea. And these are things that should be in your planning notebook, and you should start really looking into them. And this is something that has helped me through the process, because as a nonfiction author, I used to never do that in that particular way, but it has been a saving grace for me to understand that there is a system that, you know, is proven, it works, and you can adapt it to your own writing style and your tempo. And this is just off of a lot of the research that I've seen, speaking to other authors, listening to AuthorTube, buying some of the resource books, and they all will give you different ways to do that. Some of them will give you even planners to do that for you to fill in as you go along. But at the end of the day, what really matters is that you're answering those questions and you're setting out time to just really hone in on your ideas. And a lot of the time for me, just speaking to other authors and reading other authors' work will be so inspirational that it will also help you to be able to get through that initial confusion phase where we're all trying to figure out what exactly is going to be in that book. So I hope that was helpful. This has been my journey. And by no means I have all the answers, but I'm trying to share with you all the things that I'm learning, both from resources as well as very, very seasoned authors from across various genres who I'm in touch with and trying to get some mentoring out of. So good luck on your writing journey, and we'll see you soon back here in the channel. Hope that you can subscribe and share this video if you found it useful, and leave any comments on things you would also like me to cover as I go through this journey and this series of videos about your writing, your writing process and how I'm going about my literary fiction book. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.